Hello and welcome to a special edition of Outburst. I'm Glenn McGuinness. In this show, we'll be bringing you the best stories and features from 2018. Back in October, we took a closer look at democracy, and we asked 3 Order of Canada recipients how they think democracy can be improved in Canada. Here's what they had to say.
My name is Zita Cobb, and I am the innkeeper at the Fogo Island Inn. To improve democracy in Canada, we have to take back our economy. And we have to take back our economy in a way that we put communities at the center of it. And if we can get to a place where we have community-centered economies, I think we're going to have citizens that are way more engaged in the fabric of their own lives, and that's how you make a democracy. I think about democracy every day because to me it's about the level of engagement human beings have in their communities. And if people feel that no matter what they do, it doesn't change anything and everything is owned by something or someone far, far away, what's the point? And I think we can take back our economy, and as we take back our economy, we're going to take back a sense of agency in our own lives. The strength of this country has been our very close relationship with nature, and Canadian culture has emerged out of the human interaction with nature, whether it's off the coast of Newfoundland or the coast of BC or farming in Saskatchewan. That's who we are, that's where our values were formed. And I think it's these bonds with nature that should in fact be our guide for figuring out how to build a democracy and how to build an economy that's responsible to people and to the ecology.
Hello, I'm Shelagh Rogers, and I've been a broadcast journalist at CBC Radio for almost 4 decades now. I'm also the Chancellor of the University of Victoria, which is a great honor. And I think the most cell-altering thing that I've ever done in my life is to have been an honorary witness to the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada.
You did a good job.
I think the way we can improve democracy and move forward in real integrity is to honor the promises that we've made to Indigenous people in Canada through our history, through the treaties, but also observing the calls to action. There are 94 of them that the TRC left us with, and they are called calls to action for a reason. I've heard them called recommendations. That's not what they are. They are there to be acted upon, and they are there to make things better, to try to level the playing field so that Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in this country have the same opportunities, the same quality of education, if not the exact same education. I think it's very important that culture is respected. And I think that if we are to really walk in some kind of integrity through the land of this country, it's very, very important that we establish a much better relationship with Indigenous people. And part of that is to understand and really take into ourselves the true history of this country.
Hello, my name is Burtynsky, and I'm a photographic artist. To improve democracy is to make sure that we have solid information about what's happening in our world, that we have good reporting, that the fact finding in our reading material is actually strong, so that when we're reading stuff and we're cross-referencing to make sure that what we're reading is actually what is happening. For me, I'm trying to gain access into all kinds of different places, and when societies are less democratic, when they become more authoritarian, then it's much harder for me to do the work. So I'm working feverishly now because I feel the world is closing up. So I'm trying to do the work I can do at this point, because in 5 years it might be much harder to go into another country to do the work that I do. The thing that I fear about what's happening south of the border is that there's a lot of untruth being told, and how do we not let that creep into our politics? It's going to become a very, very difficult time. And so the kind of out and out lying about what's happening in the world and events, it really does undermine, I think, democracy, and the social media feeds that we have today circumvent normal ways of editing out that kind of voice, and now this technology has jumped over all of these, guidelines and all of these things that protect us from mistruths, and they're now being fed directly into the electorate. In Canada, I still feel that I have the rights that are necessary to live my life the way I want. I don't see anything immediately threatening that. It's a place that when people ask me, where in the world would, knowing all the things that you know and all the things you've seen, where would you live? And I say I live in Toronto, and I wouldn't change that.
This year, Canada's two largest cities have been forced to tackle a tragic rise in gun violence on city streets. Toronto and Montreal have opened the debate calling for a national ban on handguns. Findings from federal government public consultation will be released in early 2019. Here's what we heard outside one town hall in Toronto.
My name is Evelyn Fox. I am the mother of Kissinger Gunn, who was killed outside of a club by a stray bullet in Liberty Village on September 11th, 2016.
My name's Kelly Wetter. My son was murdered at Yonge and Bloor April 13th, 2016. His name was Gabriel Nikov. He was 18, my only child. He was murdered by a complete stranger after a 10-second altercation. And he walked away, and the person walked away and circled back and unloaded 6 bullets in his back.
And we are the co-founders of Communities for Zero Violence.
My name is Mark Morelli. I'm a retired police officer from the Hamilton Police Service. All right, and now I run a company called the Canadian Gun Vault.
Okay, what is that? Can you explain briefly?
It's a lot of things. It's been it's a page for firearm enthusiasts. We're on 4 platforms, various social media: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, podcasts. It's become a industry leader in firearms marketing and advertising for the people that sell firearms as well. We do some firearms advocacy, and I came here today to see this town hall meeting and to see how the matter of firearms and violence and involving firearms is being handled. The easy thing to do is to tell people we're going to do something. We're going to get the guns off the streets. We're going to have a ban, and it won't accomplish anything. If you're not targeting the people that are committing the violent acts involving firearms, then you're not really doing anything. It's an easy thing to do, and quite frankly, there are people that want it done for various reasons, I suppose. And it's an easy thing to put forward to the public and say we're going to ban some things, and that's going to make some changes. It won't make any difference. As a former police officer, I never knew the legal firearm community to be directly involved. If anything, I always knew them to be the most compliant, the finest citizens in the country I've ever encountered have been firearm owners. Right? They're the ones that have to act and conduct themselves in a way that allows them to maintain their license status. These are not the people committing crimes. They know that.
It seems like every single day there's a shooting with a semi-automatic handgun that these people are not legally qualified to own or use, and they're putting lives at risk. And there's kids that they're solving their problems with these guns instead of having rational discussions. What used to be a fist fight and walk away from taking your losses is now a fight on the internet, and it results in gun violence.
And the caliber of guns and the amount are extraordinary compared to even 5-10 years ago. And the age of people using them. It's just mind-boggling and very devastating and very sad.
The time for talking is no more.
Yeah, that's what I've found in the last couple of years since my son was murdered. I've gone to Ottawa, I've gone to sit in Queen's Park, I've spoken to politicians. It's a lot of talking, but no action. And, I'm an action type person where I get my mind set to something, and that's why we've done this group, the Communities for Zero Violence, and we've reached out to a lot of like-minded people, and together we will make a difference in our son's honor.
Really what it's doing is it's targeting legal gun owners, the very people that go through all the necessary steps. It's tantamount to targeting the daily commuter and thinking that he's the guy that steals a car. I mean, a person that gets a license, insures a car properly, takes a safety course, and gets the proper validation sticker for his car isn't going to run out, steal one, and use it in the commission of a crime. They're two completely distinctly different groupings of people, and all the laws that they seem to generate seem to target essentially the commuter, which is ridiculous. And that's why I'm here. I want to see what it is that they're talking about. I'm not seeing effective solutions being put forward. I'm seeing the narrative sort of being given a direction that is misleading people.
When it comes to opioids, Canada has a public health epidemic on its hands. It's affected every region of this country with no relief in sight. And this year, we took a closer look at this and how it affects police, policymakers, and even average Canadians. We had the chance to speak with Logan Carroll, a young man who is battling his opioid addiction one day at a time, but is staying clean and doing his best to get the message out there to help others. We also spoke with Karen James, an addiction specialist based here in Ottawa, and she answers some of your questions about the opioid epidemic in Canada.
My name is Logan Carroll. I'm 25 years old and I was born and raised in Ottawa. My struggle with substance use started at a young age. I was about 12 years old when it started. I started using opiates by the age of 16. It started with a simple procedure. I went in to get my wisdom teeth taken out, and that escalated for the next 10 years. It started with codeine, T3s, turned into Percocets, Percocets turned into hydromorphone, hydromorphone turned into fentanyl, and fentanyl turned into heroin. So drug abuse and substance use disorder took over my personal life in a very difficult way. It started as something that was fun, it was social. When I started really heavily using, when I was roughly about 19, I became an IV user, and I was dating a girl, a really nice girl, that fell prey to my addiction, and I took advantage of her financially and otherwise. It was my first indicator that addiction had taken over my life in a way that nobody mattered other than me. I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. I was physically dependent on these drugs, and that's how I got through the day. That's how I coped. I coped with my mental health by using drugs, and it worked for a long time, but at a certain point came along where it stopped working. So I came into recovery in October 2016, and I chose to try abstinence-based recovery, in which I used absolutely no drugs or alcohol whatsoever, and I was sober for about 10 months. And when I relapsed on a hybrid between heroin and fentanyl, synthetic fentanyl. I did about 0.2 of a gram, and I overdosed bad enough that I needed revival. I needed CPR for my girlfriend at the time. She called the ambulance. She gave me 2 Narcans, or naloxone kits, followed up by another 2 naloxone kits from the ambulance, and an epinephrine shot. I was perfectly content living the life I was living at that point, because it seemed a lot more realistic to continue living that than to quit drugs in the first place, because my mind had got so twisted that I didn't think I could come back for it. It seemed easier to continue to live the life I was living than get better. But once I got a taste of recovery in 2016, I realized that I didn't need to live like that, and there was a much better way to live. What advice would I give somebody who's searching for help? For me, I had a hard time asking for help. I had a hard time admitting that there was an issue. If I was to say anything, it would be to reach out to somebody, start with somebody, talk about it with somebody. A big part of what I do is connectivity. Get connected to the people around you, because there's people in the world that do love you, and it took me a long time to figure that out.
Karen, before we get started, I just want you to talk to me about your expertise in the field of opioid addiction.
Yeah, so I would say addiction. I've had a history, grew up in a family of addiction, became addicted myself, recovered from addiction, and I've been working over 20 years in the field. So with a lot of addiction, not just opiates, but certainly a whole range.
So our first question comes from Toronto, and Karen, let's take a look.
All right.
We keep saying there's a problem, but where is the problem? Is it a problem with young people? Is it a problem with older people? Is it a problem with really well-off people? Is it a problem with poorer people? Where's the actual problem? What are the numbers? That's what my questions would be.
So addiction actually doesn't choose a specific group or age group. So addiction can happen to anyone, and I think if you're looking for what the problem is the underlying experiences of the person. People who use drugs and become addicted use those drugs, feel better, because normally they don't feel okay. So that's the big difference. I mean, that's the population. It's people that have had experiences in their life that they haven't been able to deal with. Either they have had trauma is highly correlated with opiate addiction, and then they try this drug and it feels really good. It's like a warm, soft hug. So anyone with that kind of a background at any age is at risk to become addicted.
For me, it's how did it get so rampant in the first place? Was there not enough control or supervision of it, and how did it get to the point where it gets so easily into people's hands, and especially kids and adolescents' hands? So I would have liked to seen a bit more control around that, but that would be my biggest question, is how did it proliferate the way it did?
Okay. So one of the problems with opiates specifically is a lot of people are prescribed them. They're very normal prescription for people with pain, dental work, all sorts of things. So they come home with that prescription. They only need a couple of pills. They use those 2 pills. They put that back into their medicine cabinet and leave it there. Children will very quickly figure out those pills are worth an awful lot of money. Every single pill, you can get $40 or more for a pill. So they're gonna go sell that at school. And that's part of how the kids get access to it. Also the amount of, and we all know this, that doctors prescribe far too many opiates and without really monitoring what they were doing. So that's added to it. And now we have people who are coming in with fentanyl, and those are illegal and illicit drug dealers, and they're feeding that need because opiates are no longer the powerful drug compared to something like fentanyl or carfentanil, and that leads right into the opiate overdoses.
Just how informed legislators are on the addictive qualities of different products and how bad the numbers really are for the addiction crisis that's going on in our country. I wonder if they know and what they're doing about it.
I think it's really interesting that this gentleman talks about addiction just generally, because that is a serious problem. We have a lot of people using all sorts of drugs, and drugs have become more the common thing for people to access. And it's fine for the average person that's only going to be a recreational user. They're not going to be impacted. There is a group of people, and I'm going to say it again, it's trauma related, that will become addicted, and there's nothing that can stop that. They were set up for addiction. And so when they try to use any of these drugs, whether it be alcohol, whether it be marijuana, whether it be cocaine, and these drugs are used in groups. Nobody uses one drug anymore. They're using multiple drugs. So people with that core sort of weakness will more or less become addicted. And do I think that people really understand it? I don't. I don't think that enough. There is work being done, but I don't think that the government, for instance, is clued into some of the work that's being done.
I guess I'd like to know what the government thinks about what has caused this problem. And in particular, I don't think that if we know what's caused it, then how do we fix it?
I love that the Canadians are actually asking this question. They're saying, what are the solutions? I'm going to tell you the solutions are we invest better in people. We actually help them deal with what has affected them that makes them at risk for addiction. Again, I'm going to tell you, people that recreationally use, they're not going to be addicted. They don't have the things that are inside that are causing addiction. And that's what we have to deal with. What people have gone through in their lives and impacts them. When they have no option to heal, they're going to use drugs. And you know what I think is really sad in my mind? The only people that are actually filling a need for people who are traumatized, and we should be really worried about this, are dealers. They're the only one, it's terrible to think this, that are offering some solution to the personal pain that people are living with on a daily basis. We have left them at risk because we don't help them deal with the stuff that they have to deal with in their lives. We actually leave them at risk for a dealer. So yeah, I think it's a big crisis. Not just opiates though, please, not just opiates. Addiction is the problem.
Well, Karen, thank you very much for your help and your expertise, and I also want to thank you for the very important work that you do. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
From pipelines to protest language to land rights, reconciliation has been a recurring theme in Canada this year. We're going to bring you 2 stories on that topic now. The first is a documentary photographer who has traveled Alberta to capture and witness industry on traditional land. And then we visit an Indigenous pipeline worker who is passionate about his craft and passionate about the land his family calls home.
I believe in reconciliation because I try to live it. And I think that foundation of the treaties and the relationship that we're supposed to have as settlers with First Nations I think it's a top priority for me, and I think it should be for Canadians and the government. My name is Joey Podlubny. I'm a documentary photographer, and I like to explore things that I don't know much about. I've been on every operating SAGD site up north here and every operating mine, and I've traveled across Canada documenting industry and resource extraction. I've seen lots of injustices and I've seen lots of compromises. I've witnessed industry leading by example of what reconciliation looks like, and I've also seen industry, doing the minimum requirements that the government has set forward. It's the third land the industry is operating on, and so if you're going to walk into somebody's backyard, you should talk to them first. That's my opinion. Chief Marlou he's a Dene. They're the frog people, and he told me, he said, well, yeah, he goes, our grandfathers told us not to let the big black snake through our land. And he said, that's all I need to know. He told me that the Dene people are on this earth to protect the earth for everybody, for future generations. And so it led me to lots of different reserves. And then one of the chiefs, Chief Vern Jonve from Chippewa Prairie, he liked what I was doing, and he asked me to come up in 2013 to photograph their Dene Days, which is a cultural celebration. And then ever since then, I was hooked because they welcomed me in their community and they allowed me to explore as a non-Indigenous person and learn and grow. And so through all of those experiences and ceremonies and being in protests and in the council chambers and out in the bush with elders, I learned the pathway. Actually, is the interesting part is I went to discover about First Nations, and I ended up discovering more about myself as a human being.
Okay. Okay.
Good work.
Let's go.
Hi, I'm Davis Cunningham. I am part of the Peavine Métis settlement, and this is where we've been doing the training for the canines. I live in the Seal Lake area. There's lots of heavy oil. There's light oil. There's natural gas lines. There's all kinds of pipelines where I live.
My name is Ron Mustafa, and I'm the head instructor here for the Indigenous Pipeline Monitoring Group. We'll follow you.
The northern community, I had dogs all my life. Her name is Baby. She's a wonderful dog. She's a beautiful dog. She's really smart, actually, and she's everything I expected, I guess. The dog is trained to search for oil, gas, diesel, condensate, and stuff like that. It's what it's trained to do. Find a leak in the pipeline is basically what it's.
Okay, keep moving forward, because she's getting that nice depth, search depth.
Well, they say pipelines are the safest way to transport like oil and gas, and they are. And if they do leak, to find the leak right away and fix the problem and continue on, and less and less environmental impact.
See, she wasn't digging before. Look at her. Look at her. It works where the dog digs, that's where they dig. The companies do not have to go anywhere else on that line but that spot. It's within a meter, so the accuracy is really high. Good, that's it. We can get the Indigenous people involved like they want to be involved, and they should have been involved years ago, where they're doing consultation talks. And this way, when they're right there at the table and they say, we do this already, now they're part and parcel with the oil and gas industry. And as Canadians, this is really important.
Everybody's concerned right now about the environment. Environment is number one, because if it goes into the water, well, if we don't have water, you don't live, you know. That's just the way it is. It's the bottom line.
My name is Alida Burke. I'm a student at the University of Ottawa, and this is the GROWCER at the University of Ottawa campus. This is a 40-foot shipping container that actually grows food for the students of the University of Ottawa on campus. So we have 1,800 planting slots, growing 5 different varieties of produce for the cafeteria here. We're growing basil, arugula, mixed greens, and a few other varieties of herbs and produce. So here we have spinach that's going directly to the University of Ottawa cafeteria. So the plants actually grow in water. So what that means is that it's a closed loop system using 95% less water than traditional agriculture methods and using 91% less land than what you would normally have. We started the project actually 3 years ago when we went up to Iqaluit for the first time in our territory of Nunavut and learned more about the problem of food insecurity in Canada. So we're trying to eliminate this issue of food insecurity across Canada.
Well, as you know, the challenge of getting fresh and perishable it's very impressive.
We have 5 across Canada, 2 in Ottawa, 1 in Kuujjuaq in northern Quebec, Kugluktuk in northern Nunavut, and 1 in Churchill in Manitoba. And what they've been able to see is reducing the price of the things that they're able to grow in the community by 53%, reducing the transportation kilometers from the average of 2,000 to just 2 kilometers or less in their community, and overall save a lot of time, effort, and money being able to keep everything in the community versus having to ship it all in from other parts of Canada and around the world. We've learned that it's a really complex issue across Canada and it requires a holistic solution. So this is a one step towards addressing that. I've learned a lot about hydroponics, the technologies around that, farming, and plants in general. So what the different types of plants are, what sort of nutrients and requirements that they have and they need, I think take with me for the rest of my life. I think this is a new look on farming. Not only can you grow much more in a smaller amount of space, but you're bringing in new technology to make that much more efficient. I see this as one of the futures of farming, for sure.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on the Cable Public Affairs channel. I'm Glenn McGuinness. If you have any comments or questions about this show or any other show, our email is outburst@cpac.ca. You can also find us on social media. It's your turn to speak up, and we're listening.